Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Costa Rica Crypto, where I have the honor and the pleasure today of speaking to one of my favorites in the EOS space right now, Mr. Greg Simpson from EDNA, or otherwise known as EDNA. Welcome, Greg. A pleasure to have you on. As always, I'm really excited to talk today because we spoke about something in the pre-talk, which I think is kind of game-changing for a lot of things, particularly the science of DNA editing and DNA engineering. And I think that this conversation today is gonna probably shock some people and probably impress a lot of people. So I'm really excited to have you on. And as always, can you just kind of maybe start with a quick introduction for anybody who hasn't seen any of our previous interviews, and then just kind of a brief breakdown of how the EDNA project works?
You bet. You bet. Hey, thanks for having me again, Matt. So if you haven't heard of EDNA before, what it is a decentralized autonomous community forming now. And the purpose of the community is to secure individual rights to your DNA, protect our privacy and our DNA, and also expand what's being done with research into genetics, what our DNA means. That's its main function. The project has some pretty slick things when we're able to marry advances in technology in genetics as well as in blockchain, and the marriage of those things, along with the falling price of the cost to obtain your genetic sequence, your full entire genome. That sort of convolution brings it together, and EDNA is making use of all those advances in one.
For sure. So just to kind of give a little bit of a brief background. Essentially what EDNA is it's a DAC, and what's eventually going to happen is that people will be able to join the DAC. You're going to send them off a kit for DNA sequencing, which comes with a saliva sample. They'll send it back to you in an unmarked package with only a trace of their key, their public key, which will go to you guys. You're going to take it, scramble it, and then, of course, store it. But I guess we're going to talk about a lot of cool things today that I'm really, really excited about. How, just to kind of continue to break it down, what are some of the benefits, aside from some of the things we're going to talk about today, of storing your personal DNA somewhere?
I hate this question. Okay. So storing your DNA is important in essentially two ways. One is your DNA isn't about your identity. It's not your address or your social security number or a picture of your face. It is your identity. In a court of law, it is the identity that sends people to the electric chair or to prison for life. It's proof positive of who you are. And with that said, your identity is something you want to protect. You don't want it to be used against you in nefarious ways. And by utilizing the blockchain, using the method that EDNA has developed to secure your privacy while at the same time leaving that genetic data open. If you were to take your genetic sequence and on a hard drive and store it in a safe, well, that'd be good for your privacy, certainly, and be good to secure your own ownership of that data. Your privacy rights, your property rights. That is your property. Your DNA is not somebody else's property, it's yours. And that's one of the main tenets of the Constitution. The problem with it locked up in a safe is it doesn't help advance the research into what your DNA does. And we only know, best science out there only knows 1.5% of what's inside your DNA. So we still have 98.5% of what that data is. We don't know what it does or means. And in order to understand that data, and to help people who are suffering because of it, you've got to get that data and compare it to other genetic data. Does that make sense? So you've got two problems. A, you've got to secure it, keep it private, keep it your ownership. Don't let anybody steal it and maybe do something with it. And we'll talk about what can be done with your data in a minute. but it's got to be looked at in relationship to other DNA in order to make it useful to help end suffering and death and genetic diseases and all the things that we all would want for this world.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I guess we're going to develop that idea and some kind of really cool new revelations that you and I chatted about previously, which I'm really looking forward to and I think is absolutely massive. But before we get there, I've read a lot of articles lately, of course, about privacy concerns over some of these major testing companies, right, that people are submitting their data to. They're giving you one sliver of, 1 to the power of infinity of what you should know, and then they're charging you for it. And then there's been a lot of privacy concerns raised by some really, really high people over, some of the privacy acts some of the things that they're selling your data. Like, they're selling your data and they're making money off of it and they're charging you for it. Obviously, EDNA is doing something that's a lot different than that. Why would somebody choose to engage with EDNA over some of those other traditional companies?
Well, the main thing is the last line. Think of the most popular sequencing offer out there, right? They're everywhere. 23andMe, I'll just say them right out loud. You go look at the very last paragraph of their terms of service, and that's where you give up every single right you have to that data. Not only that, they talk clearly about money, that they're going to make money using this data and you don't get any, okay? EDNA is the exact opposite. It's your data. We don't own it. You own it. We don't even know who you are. And once we have your data, the process of getting you onto the blockchain tumbles it with others, so we can't even recreate that data if we want. It's designed intentionally to be destructive. This program, this code that it gets run through ruins that data for us for life. Now, it doesn't ruin it for you. What comes out the other end is one specific wallet that you write on the vial when you send the saliva. And all the data to recreate it out of there goes into that wallet. So you're the only one in effect with the keys. You have total ownership of that data. It's yours. You want to destroy it, you have that right. You want to profit from it, you have that right. EDNA claims no rights to that data. It's your data. That's why we serve the community. Any sequencing service, we're building one. But should we choose to use multiples, we could. But they will have to agree to this procedure, this policy that they don't own the data, you own it. We'll pay you to go sequence it, turn the saliva to data, but that data still belongs to the person whose saliva it was, or who had custody when you look at a child, right, who may not have contractual rights or abilities, but their guardian, their parents have that right. You look at elderly folks that maybe you want your sick old grandma who's not all there mentally, you want to take charge and custodial access, that would be the person who would have the rights to that DNA.
Absolutely.
So that's the difference. You own it, not 23andMe. You own it. You can profit from it. It's your data.
You're calling them out. You did it. You finally did it.
Yeah. You better cut that out.
No, that's staying. That's staying.
No, please.
I've been reading some scary things about a lot of these companies, Greg, and I encourage people to join into the Telegram and then follow you guys on Twitter and see some of these articles that are kind of crossing through, because it's very educational. Before we go too far, my friend, I want to talk to you about EDNA's a DAC, right? And I love the idea of DACs. EOS is the first thing that introduced me to a DAC, decentralized autonomous community. What is kind of the basic summation of a DAC, and why did you choose that model for EDNA?
Sure. A DAC is a decentralized autonomous community. It's also been called a decentralized autonomous company. The idea is, it's very old. This is not new stuff. It's just new stuff when you combine it with the internet. Very, very long time ago, people decided it was advantageous to band together when they had common goals. That's how countries formed. That's how tribes formed. That's how just about any group of people doing the same stuff, working toward a common goal. I mean, our country was founded on that basis. In America, every country out there was founded, on some sort of similar basis. Sometimes the guys with all the guns made the decision for you, but for the most part, we band together under common goals. And that's the idea of adapt. Now, with the internet and some tools on the internet, especially the blockchain, which allows for voter failure to commit voter fraud, governance, grievances, all those sorts of things that you'd have in a regular tribe. Hey, you don't like what just happened? Some Joe hit you and took your fishing pole and ran off. Well, you can go to the tribal elder and say, I want my fishing pole back, Joe. And Joe should say, sorry for punching me. And, there's sort of arbitration built into the blockchain. So these things can be worked out. Now, the reason I chose ADAC is when you appreciate the full power of what genetic information is, and it is powerful. Knowledge is power, right? There is some very, very deep knowledge in our health, in our lifespan, in our general quality of life. And that data is embedded in our genetics. And the reasons why companies like 23andMe and governments and big pharmaceutical companies want that information is its power. It's money, but more importantly, it's power. And if you create a company, the company is born on a hierarchy. And that hierarchy is a pooling of the power toward the top. And that's not a very viable long-term solution. Companies and corporations have problems that stem from pooling this power. It's not the best way to live life. The best way to live life is in a community where we're all sort of equals and we're all sort of pulling for the right goal. And hey, if you do this better, you take care of that, and I'll build bricks and you go get fish, and pretty soon we got everything we need and we're all happy. And I see that as a better style other than dominating people, which tends to be the corporate way, right? Let's create a very strict regimen of, that's not necessary. And all it does is really create problems and egos that they don't really serve the common good. If somebody's great at managing, let them manage. But by no means does that mean he has full control over things. And a DAC is really sort of a leveler in terms of an organization. That's why I chose that. I don't want the power. I don't want the responsibility, frankly. And so I think let's all just share the responsibility, and the end result should be much better that way.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool model. And I guess you're right. In retrospect, it's been around since the beginning of time. But I love the fact that it's a DAC. I think it's a great model for EDNA based on what we're about to accomplish. We're about to dig into that. Before we do dig into that, I want to talk about something that's coming up pretty soon. You've recently announced that you're going to be able to stake your EDNAs for more EDNA. So all of your tokens, you're going to be able to put them into a smart contract, and then over the course of the next while until the DAC is actually completed, and you've got the voting portal up and it kind of becomes a complete entity, you're actually going to be able to take your tokens, lock them up, and then you're going to get return tokens based on that, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of EDNA you could have kept for yourself, Greg. You could have put those EDNA in your pocket and kept them. Why are you giving it away? How does it all work, and why did you choose to give that back to them?
Well, Matt, it's like this. Greg's not going to do this project on his own. I'm going to need lots of help. I'm going to need lots of support. I've gotten lots of support. I'm not even where I am today without a lot of help from others. And I don't believe in something for nothing. I believe if you contribute toward a goal, and that goal is building rewards, that those rewards should be shared. And, that's just common sense. And you have to live, I have to live with myself. And if I take something for nothing, that's the definition of criminality. So I don't want to be a criminal. I don't need the karma of a criminal. And the right thing to do is share that with the people that have helped us get this far and will take us the rest of the way. So, in terms of keeping it for myself, no, that's not really an option. What's going to happen is we have 100 million tokens and we have a year or less to spend them. And the idea is the greater the response to the staking. So if you go out and get your friends to stake their coins, that doesn't hurt you, that helps you. That raises the amount you're going to get per week faster and faster.
Staking my EDNA, very, very cool. I want to talk to you about kind of one of the reasons that we came together today, of course, and something that we mentioned in the pre-talk and something we've talked about for the last couple of days, right? You recently said something that kind of intrigued me. And you recently said that we're not doing science, we're doing math. And I know that the way that you plan on organizing all this stuff is very different from the way that traditional DNA testing and research has been done. Do you want to kind of dive into that for us?
Sure. It's a deep subject, and a lot of people are not going to quite understand it. I've tried to explain it many times. I'll do my best. So, genetic research. Five or 6 years ago, you needed $1 million machine to get somebody's DNA. Today, this guy does it. The DNA goes in that little hole, that little tiny hole right there. It worms through there and it comes out the USB cable. 48 hours later, you have the entire human genome. Do you understand what an advance that is? This thing is basically a throwaway machine, which costs $1,000 for that little black thing in there that you pop out and throw away after you're done with it for 2 days, okay? Yeah. $1,000. You can have one shipped to your house. Not quite that easy, but you get my point. It used to be just a few years ago, millions of dollars to get a hold of the machine that would read the DNA from the spit and give you out the letters. Saliva, they call it saliva. So you've got that advance coming down, right? It's now very cheap, but it didn't used to be cheap. And so the way you'd set up genetics is you go, well, I've got enough money here. I've got $10 million. I can work on 100 people. 50 people with the disease I'm studying, 50 people without. Because I got $10 million. That's my funding. That's my grant. And the guy who gave me the money wants me to cure kidney disease. Some kind of kidney disease. He wants a pill for it. And if you read between the lines on what I'm saying, that's where the money came from. So the guy that gave you the money expects the profit back on the money. So you got to work on the one specific thing, which means that you're stuck with the scientific method. You're going to have to figure out, okay, what is my best hypothesis on what genes are involved in this kidney disease? Now, this is a hit or miss. You're going to run that data and you're going to look at that data 100 different ways and you're going to spend a lot of time. But remember, collecting the data is super expensive. 6 years ago, insane amount of money just to get 100 people together. Now, today, it's very different. There's lots of data. The data is cheap to get. It's easy to get. It's accurate, and we can produce a sea of it. So that changes the game, but not if you don't change the model. If you change how you approach genetic engineering or genetic research and say, I'm going to hypothesize, design my experiment, conduct my experiment, get the data and verify the results and see if it supports the hypothesis, okay? And then I'm gonna rinse, repeat, right?
Yep.
So if you ignore that, push science all the way aside, right? Get rid of it and say, I've got this sea of data. What do I do with it? Well, the one thing a computer can do with the data is compare it real good, real fast. So we take all our variance, right? And we've talked about variance. It's where each of us varies at about 3 to 5 million, about 3 million places from the standard reference genome. So we take all these variants and we start comparing them and we get together and we go, okay, this matches this, this matches this, this matches this. Now, the most complex, some genes are either on or off, and they manifest in our bodies, like Down syndrome is one. If that gene's on, you have Downs. If it's off, you don't. Now, there's other genes on either side of this gene that will act as enhancers, suppressors, or silencers to this gene. So they can either bump it up higher, move it down a little, or shut it all the way completely off, silence it, right? So, but that's still a very simple little bit of equation. Now, things like IQ or height, we're not all 5 feet or 6 feet. We're somewhere in between, and there's this bell curve, right? Some are really super tall and some are really super short, but most of us fall in the middle. Now, that means that there's multiple genes associated with height. Now, the problem is when you have 10,000 genes, and that's about the maximum we figure good science is guessing, and we are guessing, that are involved with these complex traits, the ones that involve multiple genes. So now you've got 10,000 little matches to make out there. But guess what? A computer can match 10,000 matches with other matches. I know I'm maybe confusing this, but the idea is if the computer runs over it and runs over the data and runs over the data, it will start to pull things up, and the data bubbles to the top. There's no research here. It's math. Yeah. It's just on or off switch for one of 3 billion places, right? Are they on or are they off? And what are the patterns? And bubble up the patterns. And then if we're accurate about our personal information, not our personally identifiable information, like I'm Greg Simpson and I live in, this city, or that's, but my medical history, my height, my hair color, my eyes. If I give out my psychological profile, yes, I'm not depressed. No, I'm not depressed. Well, yes, I am psychotic sometimes, but only on Tuesdays when the moon's out, right? So if I lay out in a good form my general health and physical characteristics, the computer can then take that data and match, and we will know what genes are involved in those attributes. How much do you drink? Are you alcoholic? Do you smoke weed? Do you smoke a lot of weed? Can you not live without your weed? These sorts of surveys, this sort of data that we would collect, we would then match with the genome and match with other genomes to confirm it. There's no science here. This is math. We're just plugging in the numbers. Now that information could be sold. That information has huge value. It's called the jumpstart on research. Every research project out there will want this data. Want it.
Here's what I'm hearing you say, and I want you to listen to me kind of bring this back to you and then kind of comment based on my reiteration. I'm hearing you say that traditional scientific DNA studies are funded by somebody, often pharmaceutical companies, right? And they have a select amount of people that they're doing the research on. What I'm also hearing you say is that instead of taking a bunch of data, pooling it together, finding commonalities, and then studying the associations based off there, where typical DNA researching has a hypothesis, a limited pool of people, and of course questions it's often a little bit more financially cumbersome. And if the hypothesis is incorrect, the efficiency of the study is low, and ultimately we end up with more questions than anything else. What I'm hearing you say is that's the intention of EDNA, to take everybody, give them a very basic questionnaire that doesn't necessarily involve any personal or locating information, but information about everything from their medical history to some of their physical traits. Get all of that sorted, find out the gene variants from a large pool of people, and then start making links associated with all these variants. So essentially you're working from the solution to the question, as opposed to from the question to the solution. And I think that's brilliant, man. I mean, why are people not doing this? First of all, how did you come up with this model? And why are people not doing this right now?
Well, I can explain how I came up with it pretty easily. I worked for almost 2 decades for a company called Oracle in support for the most part. And I was final tier support. So if I couldn't fix the problem, it went to the lawyers. There wasn't anybody technically above me that I could turn to for help and say, hey, I can't figure this out. My boss didn't know what I did. He couldn't do what I did. He was a manager. So there were no technical people for me to turn to. Now, most of the problems I inherited were not solved by lower tiers. Before it got to me, 5 groups had a shot at solving this problem. Now, sometimes they were individuals, sometimes they were teams, but eventually when it got to my level, it means we're being sued, people are screaming, systems are down. And I'm not talking about little systems. I'm talking about like Walmart's point of sale system, American Airlines booking system, Cabela's online catalog. You know, when these things go down, people lose millions of dollars. TPSA, the public phone system in London, there's thousands of them. I did it for decades, guys, and bar none, Every single time someone below me failed to solve the issue, it was because they stopped looking at data. They had a hypothesis. They had an idea. Oh, it must be this. It must be this. And so they wasted a lot of time trying to fix that when the problem was way over here. My solution was always, give me the logs. Software has logs, right? So you start at the beginning. Now the logs pile up to the ceiling, doesn't matter. You read the logs, you read the logs. Ooh, that's interesting bit. Put it aside. Read the log, read the log. Oh, that might be it, man. But nope, read the log, read the log. So now you got your little pile, right? You never make a conclusion. You never make an assumption. You never make a hypothesis. You just get through the data. You get it all. Now it's like this. When you have all the data, you can't be wrong. I'll give you an example. This is fun because you have to see it. It's two different methods of thinking, which is why I'll get to answering the second part of your question. So let's say there's a box, big box, and guy says, you and I are standing there, and this guy walks up, he says, you know, there's a bear in there, and I'll give $100 to either one of you who, you have to bet against each other, is the bear alive or dead? And you and I take him up on it. Sure, we'll play the game for $100 prize. And so I go over and I sniff, and, you know, let's make you sniff because that's better. You go over there and you sniff, and you go, I smell poo. You know, it smells like fresh poo. I think the bear's alive. And I go over and I go, hey, boo-boo, you want some picnic basket? And I say, no, he didn't say nothing. He didn't growl. That can't, the bear's dead. For sure he's dead. So the guy says, okay, you can lift up the box and see who wins. We lift up the box and there's an elephant. It's not even a bear. Now the problem was you didn't have all the data, right?
Sure.
You did not have all the data. First, before you made the hypothesis, there's no need for a hypothesis when you have all the data. You have the answer. There's no bear in the box. It's an elephant. And, you know, who cares if he's dead or alive? It's an elephant. It's not a bear. Genetic scientists, genetic research train. They're on a train track, okay? When you want to become a geneticist, you get on the train track. Go to the university. You're on a train track, man. You're doing what they tell you. They tell you when to go, what to do, what to read, what to study, what to think, what to do, how to answer. And if you get it wrong, you're off the track. Hell no, get back on the track. You'll never be a scientist if you're not back on the track. And so they run them down this train. I have a helicopter, man. I don't think like that. I go where I want. You know, I don't have to, I'm not on their track. I got on their track and I'm like, I'm out of here, man. I jumped that track a long time ago. I don't want anything to do with their telling me how to think, how to approach problems. Now, genetic scientists do not approach problems from, let's go get all the data in the world and then we'll get our hypothesis. That's not science. So they're not trained to think that way. They would never come up with this. It'd be the last thing in their minds. But as a computer programmer who's been hired and has spent 2 decades solving problems with broken software, this is how you do it. And face it, the wet work, getting the little pipette and squeezing the juice into that machine, that's 2%, 5% of genetic research. The real research is in data. And that's what I'm good at. And that's why I came up with this. And that's why they didn't. And they won't, because they don't think like that.
How does it all kind of work? Like, how would you break down the way that this system is going to make finding the solutions easier than traditional systems? Okay,
this is easy. This is actually easier to describe. I've been whiteboarding for 3 days, so I got it, right? And I know I got it because the math works. And I ran it against the numbers that we're talking about and the number of variants. So we've each got 3 million variants, right? Wallet A, wallet B, wallet C, wallet EDNA's tokens, right? Inside that wallet are the reconstruction. We don't care about that. We don't care about the wallet yet, except we care about the traits that are associated with that wallet that you can publicly identify and say, okay, wallet A is blonde, 5'5", 5'7", whatever, blah, 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 drinks a lot, blah, 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 whatever, predisposed to this disease. His father had it, his mother had it. That's that health survey, right? It's associated with the wallet. Now, you take those wallets and you start matching. And then you start taking individual genetic variants and you start matching. They're not tied to the wallet yet. But once it builds up to a level of, okay, I've got 7 genes, 7 genetic variants in this wallet, and I found another wallet that looks just like this person and has those traits, right? Now we have a match. So that goes into a pocket and the wallet gets told, hey, there's a pocket over here that you should look at. So the person who owns that pocket can go explore in there and go, well, what's this pocket about? Oh, it's about my kidney disease. And geez, it's got 10 genes that they've kind of mathematically shown that are involved in this thing. And then the time goes a little further and the code runs a little longer. And now it's got, 8,000 genes that are associated with it. And then all of a sudden it's got 8,000 again, and 8,000 again, and 8,000 again. And it's not growing. Why? Problem solved.
Problem solved.
You get it?
Yeah.
Problem solved. There it is. There's the genes involved. That's what needs to be edited. That's what researchers need to focus on turning off or interfering with that process or somehow screwing up. You got to mess up those genes. Those guys are the problems. Go get them. And that's what CRISPR is going to be able to do. And, they were talking about doing multiple edits in one CRISPR load. So that technology is coming along. Don't think 10,000 is a big number or 8,000 is a big number. It's not. CRISPR can handle it. And, if you need 2 shots instead of 1, oh, so be it. But it's coming. The ability to fix it, we just have to know what to fix. And this is the way to figure out what to fix. Right. So
Greg, you've done a lot of media at this point. You've done a few different interviews with me. I'll link to those below. You also had a really great interview with Fuzzy, Sir Fuzzy, and of course another good one with Martin. I know you've got a ton of interviews in your back pocket. You're really approachable. You're easy to talk to. But one of the things that always kind of intrigued me is that you've talked about the way that EDNA is more than just a project, it's a movement. What do you mean by that? You know what I mean? And what kind of motivates you to do all this media and talk to as many people as possible?
I think it's a movement because it's interesting when people come into my Telegram. That's where I mostly reside and meet new people coming on board to some of the concepts we've been sharing and what EDNA is about. And when they drop in, a couple things happen. Is either they're super quiet, and you can almost like hear them reading up, like what's going on here. They're one of those people that walk into a cocktail party and immediately head for a quiet corner to watch everybody, right? What's going on? Let me get the lay of the land. And then there's other people that sort of burst in the room. Oh my God, I found you. I've been looking for you my whole life. I can't believe I'm here. And they're like suddenly the life of the party and the whole conversation just boom, flops over onto this person and their take on EDNA. And that's why I call it a movement, because it's like, this is a group coming together. This is how groups form. Some people come in and they just want to hang out and listen and see what the group's doing, and then some people have certain really strong feelings about certain things. And, I've battled about CRISPR in the Telegram rooms, and I've battled about security, and I've battled about tokenomics. And, and when I say battle, I don't mean battle. I mean, it's a discussion, and it's usually very enthusiastic. So definitely the Telegram is the place to be. It's probably the cursor for what I expect their DAC to be like. Everybody's got their pet ideas, and they're sort of like very excited and enthusiastic about certain things in the product. And that's great. That's how we're going to decide who's going to be, you go work on marketing with those guys who all love, to tell people about it, and you practice your story and, get the science from that guy. He can go with you. And that's sort of how the DAC, I think, will bubble up like a massive Telegram room where we're all like sharing ideas and sharing, the excitement of let's make the world a better place.
Yeah, I think it also illustrates a lot of really interesting points that people aren't aware of. First of all, CRISPR technology is here. Gene editing is happening. Human trials are going on. I also think that it opens up a lot of things that people are unaware of about traditional DNA testing companies. Like, they are taking your data, they are taking it from you, you are paying them to do so, and they are selling it, and they are making a lot of money. And maybe it's time that everybody takes their rights back and perhaps shares in a little bit of something that's not only going to further DNA research, but also stop these companies from stealing your information and maybe, God willing, putting some money back in your own pocket.
Well, I really like what you said there. Take your rights back. Somebody in this room came up with the tagline, "Own your DNA." And that's what we should be doing. It's ours. And no one else has that right to own it.
Greg, I've since the first time we've talked, I've liked the project so much that, of course, I've kind of become involved a little bit myself in this back room a little bit. I think that other people should do the same, because I think that what you're proposing right now with the way that you're organizing information and reverse engineering solutions by finding out the answers and then kind of reversing that into the questions, I think is going to change DNA research as we know it. I think it's really, really cool, and I'll continue to support you. And obviously, I'm a token holder. I will be. Where can people who want to get involved come and find you? Obviously, Telegram is probably the best place.
I think Telegram. I'm willing to answer any questions. I'm willing to do any interviews. I'm willing to sit and talk to anybody about it. Telegram seems to be a really, really convenient way to reach a lot of people. And when you drop in, it's not like you sent me an email and I lost it in the sea of 5,000. It's in the chat, and if my name's on it, all I have to do is click a button and see something was addressed to me, which, I'm pretty responsive. I try not to let any single question go unanswered. And if I fail to answer your question, just ask it again. Hopefully you won't have to do that. Hopefully I'll do my thing and make sure that we get you a reference, or we get you a citation, or we get you the reasoning behind something. Whatever you need, you can get a question. I also don't refuse help of any kind. If you think you want to be involved in this project and you've got a skill or you've got an idea about what we could or should be doing, please bring it to me. I'm a yes guy. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I'll look for that much, 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 much more often than I'll look for a no. We shouldn't mess in that. Yeah. So I love to hear ideas. I love to hear people's thoughts if they think there's a contribution they want to make. If I haven't even thought of it, that doesn't matter. Just bring it to me and let's chat it out.
EDNA's really close to my heart, because I think you guys can solve a lot of issues in a hurry. We just need to get people involved.
Oh, we're gonna.
What's that?
We're gonna.
Yeah.
We're going to.
There's never been a model out there that has considered this approach to DNA research, and I've heard you say that DNA research is officially over. I think that's an interesting statement. I think it's a strong statement, but I also think that you could really be right by reorganizing the way that we look at information and reverse engineering questions, as opposed to shooting off hypothesis for funded research with limited samples. I think you could change the very face of not only EOS, not only genetic research, but the future for all humans. So I appreciate you, man. I appreciate everything you do. And
the scientific method, genetic research is over. Let me take that up.
Okay.
The genetic research is over. Well, I'll probably get in a lot of trouble for saying that. Did I say that? Maybe I did. What I mean by that is this approach will be a jumpstart. The scientific method, the scientific approach is extremely slow and painful. It's tedious. It's trial and error. There's a lot of wasted time built into that. I believe that this approach will jumpstart better research, advanced research. We can get you 8 miles down the 10-mile road, and you guys can polish it off with the scientific method and prove it out in studies and trials and anything else like that you need. I think that's really what we're about. But I would say if you're genetic research, you're going to run out of things to work on pretty fast once EDNA comes to bear. And you probably want to start looking in our common, outside of the variants. Look at our common DNA and figure out why we don't have any more gills left. I would like some gills. So figure out which one of our genes does that. Because nobody I know has any, so it must be common and we're all turned off, right?
Absolutely, man. I want gills. You make that happen.
I want gills. Can you imagine swimming around the ocean? There's more ocean on this planet than there is land.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty fun.
The scuba tanks are cumbersome and
dang, you got to refill them.
Now let's get real here. Greg, awesome project, important work. I want to see you succeed. I want to be a part of you succeeding, and I appreciate what you're doing out there, and I look forward to doing some future updates and spending some more time with you.
That's great, Matt. Thanks for having me, brother.
Thanks for coming. Pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Pleasure.
I shouldn't call you brother on camera. You are my brother. Like, I feel that way. Thanks for having me, Matt. It's been great.
It's been a pleasure, buddy. And you are my brother. I appreciate what you're doing. Project is strong. This is just the beginning. We'll talk soon.